Welcome back to the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program. I am Ms. Jamila Amin Bacchus, facilitator for CAPE Biology. Today we are looking at Unit 1 course, Sexual Reproduction in Humans. Right, this is where the air gets rare. This I know many people they look forward to when they speak about biology. So we are going to look at sexual reproduction in humans. So, sexual reproduction. What is the benefit of sexual reproduction to a species? It ensures the continuity of the species. It ensures that we can continue to have a population of, in this case, human beings because of the process of sexual reproduction. And not just a population, but a diverse population, which will ensure our continuous adaptation to our environment. So we're going to look today at sexual reproduction, and in particular, we will be looking at the parts of the body that are involved in sexual reproduction. So what should we know? What should we know coming into here? You should have known what is sexual reproduction, and you should have known something about histology. You would have done histology in Unit 1 biology, so bring that knowledge to bear today. We're looking specifically at, we want you to be able to describe the structure of the human male and female reproductive systems, be able to outline the functions of the structure of the male and female reproductive systems, justify the structural features to facilitate its functions, and be able to explain semen production. We also want you to be able to draw, label, and annotate the male and the female reproductive systems. And we want you to be able to appreciate the uniqueness of each part of the reproductive system in bringing about reproduction. Finally, we would like you to be able to answer questions that are based on this topic for CXC exams. So these are what some questions would look like. These are the paper 2 type questions. Firstly, we have described the 5 main structures of the female reproductive system. This was actually a question that was asked on a past paper. And, you know, if I may say, I actually marked this question, and I found that a number of students misinterpreted exactly what was being asked here. So we're going to look at that later on. It looks like a very simple question, but you would not believe how people misinterpreted exactly what was being asked for. We also have discussed how the structure of the vas deferens and the penis facilitate their functional roles in the fertilization process. Again, we're going to be looking at differentiating between structure and function. It's very important that you appreciate structure to be able to know how something works. All right? So we're going to be looking at those later on. So here we see a diagram of the male and female reproductive system. We are seeing the side view of both systems. We also need to be able to recognize them from the front view. So we will want to identify the structures individually in the male and the female reproductive system. As we look, please bear in mind, I want you to focus on what are the similarities and the differences between both systems. Are there similarities? Are there differences? And we're going to also be looking at the shape, the structure of these systems to be able to make a connection with their function. Okay, let's look at the male reproductive system. We would like to know the main parts of the male reproductive system. We want to look at their structure, and later on we will look at their function and be able to make a connection between both. So you see in here the penis, the structure. So you have the glans penis. That's one. Then you have the testes. And you notice there are a pair of testes. Next you have, so let me just write a 2 next to this. Next we have these structures And you notice too, this long structure here, it's called the vas deferens. It's also known as the sperm duct. Then we have a tube that is running all the way down the penis. This tube is known as the urethra. The urethra, very important tube. Lastly, we have, so we put a number 4 by the urethra. Lastly, we have a number of glands that are working together as one unit. So even though I said 5, we will see there are 3 glands that are actually working together collectively as one unit producing semen. So we have 3 glands. You can see you have a pair of these here. These are called the seminal vesicles. So you have 2 of them. Next, you have this gland, and I'm sure we all know about this gland because we have heard about it so frequently. It's the prostate gland. I know we hear about prostate cancer and all of that, so we know there's a gland called the prostate gland in males. There's no prostate gland in females. And lastly, we have another gland here, which is called a Cowper's gland or a bulbous gland, and that is just at the base of the prostate gland. So those are the 5 main parts. What I want us to do is to be able to eventually make a connection between the structure and the function. So let's look at the female reproductive system. Again, you're seeing a front view of the female reproductive system. This actually shows more or less a 3-dimensional view of it, and this would be just a 2-dimensional view. So we can actually see, get a realistic picture of what the structure looks like. Again, we're going to look at the 5 main parts of the female reproductive system. If we look at this, we are seeing this part here. Again, there are 2. There's a pair of these structures. This is known as the ovary. And we look at the function of that, a very important part of this system. Next, we have these tubes here. You have 2 one on either side. These tubes are known as the fallopian tubes, also known as the oviduct. And we have this structure here. It is called the uterus. People will call it the womb. Same structure they're speaking about. Look at its location, look at its size, look at its shape. All of this will help us to appreciate structure and function. We also have the 4th part, would be this structure here called the cervix. If we look at this structure, we actually seeing a little more that you may not see there in terms of how this structure is made up. This is the cervix. And lastly, we have this area here, which is the vagina. Good? So all of these structures are working together to carry out reproduction in the female, right? So I want us now to be able to make a connection between structure and function. All right? So I would like you at the end of the day to be able to draw the structures of the male and female reproductive system. But let's look at the structural features of the male and the female reproductive system. I would like you to look at, for each part, I would like you to look at 2 structural features. You can look for more. Remember, we are looking for size, location, contents, color if possible, shape. All of those things fall under structural features. So if we look at the male, let's start with the male, we can see 1, the testes, and we can say that the testes, we have 2 of them, we have a pair of them. They are oval shaped, right? We can also speak in terms of its location. The testes are held outside of the body, right? So those things would be some of the structural features of the testes. What about the vas deferens? The vas deferens is a long, narrow tube. It's a long, narrow tubular structure. right? And that has a very important role to play in how it actually works. The urethra, that tube which runs down the middle of the penis, it is a narrow duct, and its location is from the bladder down through the penis. Fourthly, we have the penis. It is made up of erectile tissue, which is really smooth muscle, and it plays a very important role in penetrating the vagina. So this erectile tissue plays a very important function. So its structure, it's erectile tissue. It also has 3 columns of tissue. The fifth one, the glands, we have, as we said, 3 different glands: the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the Cowper's gland. And in terms of their structure, each of them have slight differences in their structure. The prostate gland is actually the largest of these 3 glands. It actually is located around the urethra, and it is the hardest of these 3 tissues. The Cowper's gland is the smallest of them, and it's located below the prostate gland. The seminal vesicles would be the first glands that the sperm will meet before it enters into the urethra. So in terms of their location or in terms of their size, all those things will speak to their structure. Let's look at the female. So we have, with the ovary, there are 2 ovaries, and they are both oval-shaped. We could also speak to their contents. They contain immature eggs, so all that will fall under their structural features. For the fallopian tubes, it's a long, thin, narrow tube. It also contains cilia. The uterus, it is an inverted pear shape, and it has 3 layers. 3 layers of tissue within it. The cervix, it has a cylinder shape, and it is a ring of muscle, right? Its location, it is at the base of the uterus, more or less interfacing with the vagina. And the vagina is a long, narrow, muscular tube. It has a very rugged structure. Good? So all of these are structural features. Why is it important that we understand structure? What if you had to make an artificial reproductive system? Which is happening, okay? And what would you want to know? You know, we have a heart machine that is at work now. It's because scientists would have worked out what is the structure of the heart and understood how the structure facilitated its function that they are able to make an artificial heart. So when we appreciate structure and understand how structure lines up with the function, then we have an appreciation of the bigger picture, and so we can apply that knowledge in, to create things. And this is what science is all about. We're not just learning to pass an exam. We are learning to deepen our understanding and to be able to invent things and to do experimentation and so on, and to make lives better for people. Okay? So now that we have seen the structural features, let's see if we can put some functions to these different structures. So the testes, what will be the main function of the testes? The testes are responsible for what we call spermatogenesis, for producing sperms. Very important. The testes are also important for producing hormones. We know testosterone is the male hormone, and the testes are responsible for producing this hormone. So that's their function. Good? The vas deferens. The vas deferens is a long, narrow tube, and it is found between the testes, between the epididymis, and actually the urethra. Now, the fact that this tube is narrow, what if this tube was a very wide tube? would it be as effective in moving sperm from the epididymis, which is the area where it is stored after it is made? Would it have been as effective in moving that sperm from the epididymis to the urethra? The answer is no. The wider the tube, the greater would have been the impact of gravity, and the less the pressure would have been in order for it to be able to swim up against gravity and move upwards to meet the other fluids. So the fact that this tube is a narrow tube, it is a muscular tube that is actually helping to propel the sperm upwards, it gives the sperm an increased chance of reaching upwards to be able to connect with the fluids coming from the glands. So that is where structure is related to function. The urethra, this is this tube which is moving from the bladder down through the penis. This tube is responsible for moving both urine and semen. So this tube, its function is to carry urine as well as semen out of the body to be able, of course, in the case of semen, to be deposited in the vagina. The penis, what is its function? It's simply to insert the semen in the vagina. So when you look at the structure in terms of its long, narrow, muscular structure, it has to be able to fit into the vagina, this long, narrow tube. And the vagina, as we know, it can be a very tight space. So the penis has to penetrate that. So it has to be made up in a particular way to be able to do that. And the penis also, you need to get stimulation for this penis to be able to become erect and so on. When it becomes erect, you don't want a man to be walking around with the penis erect all the time. Of course, he can put himself in danger, he can bounce into things and so on. So you want the fact that you have this erectile tissue that can fill with blood or it can be reduced, it makes it very efficient in terms of the job it has to do, right? So it's when it's needed, it's when it will be filled with the blood and it can penetrate the vagina. So again, structure and function. The 5 glands, these glands have to be able to support the sperm. They have to be able to feed the sperm energy. They have to be able to provide an environment in which the sperm will swim and survive. They have to be able to give the right pH, so the sperm, when it enters the vagina, it will be able to continue living, because the vagina is very acidic. And so if the semen doesn't have the right pH to reduce that pH in the vagina, then the sperms will die. So these glands, these are very, very important in ensuring that the sperms survive to be able to do their job, which is to fertilize the egg. Let's look at the female reproductive system. We want to be able to make the connection between structure and function. So the ovary, what do we recognize about the function of the ovary? The ovaries are responsible, like the testes. So again, we're looking at similarity and differences as we go along. Like the testes, the ovaries are the structures that are responsible for the production of the female gamete, or the egg. So the ovaries carry out the process oogenesis. The ovaries also are responsible for producing hormones, which will allow the whole process of fertilization to take place. You have the hormones estrogen and progesterone that are produced in the ovaries. The fallopian tubes, like the vas deferens, again, look at similarities, differences, keep that in mind. The fallopian tubes are long, narrow tubes. They connect the ovaries with the uterus. And they have to facilitate the movement of the egg from the ovary to the uterus. Remember, the egg structure, the egg cannot move on its own. So within the fallopian tubes, you have some hair-like structures called cilia, which moves the egg along. So the function of the fallopian tubes is really to facilitate, one, the sperm reaching up to fertilize the egg, and secondly, for the fertilized egg to move its way down to the uterus. The uterus, this we said, it's an inverted pair, and this is where you will have implantation. The fertilized egg will now implant itself there. Within the gestation period, you will have the embryo and later on the fetus developing within there. So that structure has to be able to facilitate holding and ensuring the right environment for the development of these structures. The cervix, this is a tube. It has more or less a cylindrical structure, and it literally controls the movement of things out of the uterus. It controls how substances will move in and move out of the uterus. And so this tube, it's very important that this tube, there are some people who get miscarriages simply because this structure may not be able to hold the developing fetus inside. And so this plays a very, very important role in ensuring during the process of the development of the fetus that it is kept within there. There's a plug normally that forms within it, and it is kept. So structure, function, very important. The vagina. Of course, we all know the vagina plays many different roles. You know, some people will only look at the fun role. But it has a role in terms of ensuring that the sperm reaches to the uterus. It also facilitates the passage of the baby, right, during birth. The vagina has to stimulate the man. So the vagina has to be made up in a way that would allow the man to become energized, so to speak, during the process of what we call coitus. And so the vagina has this rigid structure to be able to do that. If the vagina was just a smooth cylinder, you will not be able to get the kind of sensations that the male will get. So again, structure, function, because you want the man at some point in time to be able to ejaculate, to release the semen. And because of the structure of the vagina, with its rigid nature, it is able to stimulate the man and so allow him to be able to ejaculate and do what we all are looking for, which is to release the sperm and to be able to have the next generation of human beings here. We'll continue in a little bit. Good. So here we are seeing some of the accessory glands that are important in the production of semen. So I just want us to look at some of them and see exactly what they do. So here we are looking at the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the bulbourethral gland. These glands secrete the fluid that enter the urethra. So the seminal vesicle. These are a pair of glands, and they are located just before the sperm would reach to the urethra, right? So these glands, they have a short duct that joins with this, the vas deferens at the ampulla to form the ejaculatory duct. They are, the fluid from these vesicles, it's viscous, it's very thick, and it contains fructose, which provides it with energy, for the sperm has to be able to swim for that distance to reach the egg. So it needs that energy support. It also provides it with prostaglandins, which contribute to the mobility and the vitality of the sperm, and the proteins that cause slight coagulation reaction in the semen after ejaculation. So you will notice when semen is ejaculated, it has this thick kind of jelly-like appearance, and that is because of the proteins that are present in the fluids coming from this gland. The prostate gland This is a firm, dense structure that is located just inferior to the urinary bladder. It is about the size of a walnut, and it encircles the urethra as it leaves the urinary bladder. So this gland, it produces secretions which are thin, milky color, and alkaline. This is very important. It's alkaline because, as I said earlier, the pH of the vagina is acidic. The pH, we know a pH meter goes from 0 to 14. And from 0 to 7, 7 is neutral. So from on this side, it's more acidic. And from 7 to 14 is more alkaline. So in this area here, you will find the vagina is acidic. And the alkaline, you will find on this end. So the fluids coming from the prostate gland, they're alkaline. So when they, along with the other fluids from the other glands, would penetrate, would enter into the vagina, they will neutralize the acidic environment. Of course, the first set of sperms that enter, they will meet that acidic environment and they will die. So the first set, I say they are sacrificial lambs. But in going in, they will help to neutralize the acidity of the vagina. Okay, so these have to ensure the motility of the sperms, meaning that the sperms has to be able to continue to swim to be able to reach, because it's very important. It's a very, very long journey that the sperm has to go to in order to reach up to the egg. The bulbourethral glands, again, these are a small set of glands. They are located just below the prostate gland. And the fluid from these glands, they neutralize the acidity of the urine residue in the urethra, because remember, the urethra is carrying both urine coming from the bladder and the semen. So if you have urine in there, it will affect the nature of the semen. So the product from the bulbourethral gland will actually neutralize the acidity of the urethra before the semen will be able to exit, right? It also is important in providing lubrication for the tip of the penis during intercourse. Good. So you can see these glands are very, very important. So whenever a man, again, think of how these structures will facilitate function. And so if something goes wrong with these glands, you could appreciate that the man may have challenges with ejaculation, with ensuring the survival of the sperms, right? So again, knowledge of biology will help us to understand how our systems work. Sometimes people cannot get pregnant, and they may suggest one reason or the other. And in a case like that, you may have to strip down and look at every single part of both male and female and see, okay, what is working, what may not be working, why the person cannot get pregnant. Okay? So the seminal fluid or semen, right? Semen is a slightly alkaline mixture of sperm cells and secretions from the accessory glands. Secretions from the seminal vesicles make up about 60%. So the seminal vesicles has the largest part of this fluid, and most of the remainder come from the prostate gland, and secretions from the bulbourethral gland contribute only a small volume. So these three glands work together to produce semen. So if we come back to here, remember we started off at this point. Describe the 5 main structures of the female reproductive system. They could have asked you the same questions to the male. Now, very, very importantly, you notice this actually was a question on a past paper. So you notice that they just said describe the 5 main structures. They did not say describe the structure or describe the function. I recall that with this question, many students would have written about the functions of these structures. And sadly, they did not do very well. Because this question, just using the word describe without saying describe structure or describe function, you will be speaking about structure. Implied in the word describe without saying describe structure or describe function is structure. So you had to speak something about the structure. And again, that is not something that a lot of our students do very well. They tend to know the functions much better and they focus on the functions, but they do not pay a lot of attention to structure. And that is why throughout this exercise here this morning, I have been insisting that you look at structure and you look at function and be able to use one to justify the other and understand how they work together to allow structures to function. Whatever structure you're looking at, you need to be able to separate structure from function. If you're looking at the eye, you're looking at the skin, how does the structure, how is it made up, and how does it work? Good, so I'm sure by this time you can go back now and look at the 5 main structures of the female reproductive system. The ovary, I can hear you saying it, the ovary. What about the ovary? If you're describing it, you're talking about its size, you're talking about its shape, right? It has an oval shape. You're talking about its contents. You can talk about its location. All those things are structural features. Likewise, if you're talking about the fallopian tubes, you can speak about its size, its location, its shape. It's a tubular shape. You can speak about the fact that it has cilia inside of it. All of that is structure. Remember, its function is to facilitate the transport of the egg, or its function is to facilitate the sperm moving up. But that's not the question you asked. Describe, imply, talk about its structure. Likewise, we could have looked at the uterus. Structure again, it's an inverted pair. It has many layers. You could have spoken about it's held central to the system. It has the fallopian tubes on either side, or anything merely resembling anything about structure would give you the marks. The cervix, you could have spoken about the cervix and its structure, and likewise the vagina. So be very careful with your questions that are posed to you, right? Sometimes when it seems too easy, it seems too simple, take another look at it, right? Anytime you see anything that is underlined or boldly lettered or so on, take some time. It's better you take 1 minute, 2 minutes to understand your question and underline key words and phrases rather than you jump to answer a question. Secondly, discuss how the structure of the vas deferens and the penis facilitate their functional roles in the fertilization process. As we have been saying all along, we need to be able to look at structure and understand and appreciate how it facilitates function. So the vas deferens, we know it's this long, narrow tube. There are 2 of them, and they are facilitating the movement of the sperm from the testes, which are located outside the body, down low, and they have to go upwards to the urethra. So in order for that to occur, these tubes have to be very narrow. They have to be very strong. They have to be able to help with moving the sperm along. So their structure has to be able to facilitate the function. If these tubes should become blocked, or if these tubes should become too wide, they may not be able to function, right? So that, very importantly, the structure facilitates its function. The penis, we know the penis has to penetrate the vagina. So the penis has to be erect. It has to be able to, have enough force to penetrate the tube, which is pretty narrow. It also has to be able to become filled with blood. So if you may have a problem which deals with your blood, you may have a problem with getting the penis erected. If you have problems in terms of your energy level, you may also have a problem here. So that the penis, again, structure of the penis and its function. We know that persons who may have problems with their prostate gland and so on may have problems here because the prostate gland actually surrounds the urethra. So if the prostate gland becomes enlarged, you may have problems with the flow of urine and therefore the flow of semen out of the penis. So again, structure and function, there is a link and you need to be able to appreciate them, right? So here, again, just taking a look at these structures, you need to be able to draw these structures, give a very, simple drawing of them. Here is the structure of the penis. So as you can see, there are several layers, right? This is where the erectile tissue that becomes filled with blood, and you have, it's protected. You have the foreskin to protect it, and very, very important in terms of the structure of this gland. The man also has to be stimulated, so this area here is very sensitive to any stimulation because the man has to be able to ejaculate. And so the stimulation in that area, it's super sensitive, and so it will facilitate that. Good, so we started off looking at, these were the objectives: describe the structure of the human male and female reproductive system, outline the function. So again, putting focus on structure and function, justify the structural features to facilitate function, and explain semen production, right? I would like you to practice these roles. I would like you to practice drawing the male and the female reproductive system. I know it's a simple structure that you may have known from since in the lower school, but still you would be surprised. People do make mistakes with these drawings. Right? You also have to appreciate the uniqueness of each part of the reproductive system in bringing about reproduction and answering exam type questions. I know this is the beginning of this chapter on reproduction. The next thing we're going to look at would be the process of gametogenesis, which involves oogenesis, which is the formation of the egg, and spermatogenesis, which is the formation of the sperm. And we continue. This is quite an exciting topic, and I know you will be well informed. So continue to look at this channel, and you will continue to be informed. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.